first person that I'm going to bring up is this beautiful woman standing next to me, Lydia Pons, and she'll also be speaking with Katherine Guerrero. Lydia is the co-director of AIM SoCal. She's the director of Idle No More SoCal. Her campaign and volunteer work varies from local to national. They support undoing extractive industries, that their communities suffer the violence of man camps caused for missing and murdered women. We recognize no borders. They recognize no borders as Indigenous people. AIM SoCal works to protect sacred sites and Indigenous rights from Mauna Kea to Ears and other places. We continue to campaign, not your mascot, in the sports industry. Locally, they support ending homelessness, holding government officials accountable, changing education curriculum, buying back South Central Farm, ending youth incarceration, sharing resources and gathering resources and information for food and water security for the people, just to name a few. This lady is active everywhere. And Kathleen is a high school justice, Katherine is a high school justice teacher, so we're going to bring them up first. And ladies, thank you very much.
Thank you again for being here, everyone. It's always an honor and a blessing to wake up in the morning to a new day. And before this heat affects us, this climate has changed by many, many things that Corey described in our AIM work. Don't take anything for granted. I hope everyone has water today, like right now you have water. Let me start by saying I work at a high school, and never before in my life did I ever think that I would meet the students who don't graduate. And every year, for the past 6 years, the students that graduate have a reading level of a first grader. And it's cause for concern because their only option to make their families or communities proud would be to join the military. So with the military comes a promise of education after they serve. And to me, that's one of the biggest farces because the people of color, the students of color, are the first to have these offices located in their community, strip malls, South Central, East LA, and other parts of Los Angeles and Southern California. We don't see these militarized recruitment offices in Beverly Hills or Brentwood or Malibu. So with that comes generations of being illiterate, not knowing how to negotiate the future for their health or happiness. But they go to war and they come back traumatized. They go to war and they come back with PTSD and very little coping skills. So when I was asked to speak about the effects of war on the indigenous, well, the war is there on the front lines at the reservations because for over 150 years, the minerals and the resources have been pristine and untouched for the most part on the reservation, and Trump is about to repeal the federal laws that protect land and water. So what that means is that when they need materials to build bombs, to extract even further and decimate and ruin the land, mostly sacred sites of which the tribes pray at and have their rites of passage for their community and gather medicine, will be decimated and ruined. But that's not just here in the United States. The front lines are at wherever the indigenous are. The United States military arrives, makes contract to have a civil war there from Guatemala, San Salvador. Anywhere you look to the indigenous, from Australia and Hawaii, which is still America, you have this extractive, destructive mentality. And my sister here was sharing with me, it's definitely the cowboy mentality, right? And it's us versus them, because those extractive industries that supply materials for war aren't really operating in the fact of environmental resource preservation or to clean up after themselves. But ladies and gentlemen, the worst case scenario is the inhumanity caused for the man camps of these destructive industries. The man camps are placed, they're all around the world, but mostly these pipelines that generate petrol for other countries or obligations to other countries and not for the United States. It's a bucket bucket of lies that they're telling us, that the oil industries for us, for national security, we have to be energy independent, that the pipelines, the 37, 50 plus pipelines are being built are for our use, our consumerism. It's not true. What's happening with those man camps everywhere around the world and the military bases are exploitive, sexual enslavement of children and young girls too young to discern for themselves. So I ask you, the children and young boys and girls in your families will never know a day of being captured and brutally beaten and having to succumb to the violence that men have at these man camps building these mines and these oil pipelines, and or even militarized bases where men in our uniforms, United States military, go to pay to have sex with children. There's something beyond wrong with that. There's something inherently evil. So my thoughts and prayers today are that we stop the violence. We stop the violence that's surrounded, connected, and built upon the three letters of war. 3 letters of war, such a short word. 3 little letters that cause so much damage, hurt and pain, and unhealthy living for the planet and Earth Mother's children. I don't get it. Why are we still at war? Simply because of greed. Simply because of power. The United States is the biggest bully and the biggest hypocrite. So, you know, we never played a game of cowboys and Indians because that's just, it's not feasible to capture to stay grounded as to who we are as indigenous people. So with that, I have to ask each and every single one of you, when we talk about war, that you include the violence against children and against indigenous women all around the world. It's not just the extractive industries. I also couple that and marry that to, connected to the military bases around the world. And whatever men are caused for their expenditures and the way that they spend our tax dollars in causing violence and harm to children and to young women, we need to stop funding war. Simple like that. We need to stop funding our war. And maybe we could just stop paying our taxes altogether. We won't have money for war. I don't know. I don't have the answer, but that's why we're here this morning, right? Is to collectively be united, peaceful, and prayerful, and to have the answer to this thing called war. Much love to you all for being here. Thank you. I'm going to pass this on to Katherine.
Good morning. So, I'm a high school teacher, and I have been teaching social justice for about 12 years now. And it really strikes me that my students do not know a life without war. Yet they also do not have memories of the tragedy of war hitting our own soil. And so because of that, they don't really understand what it means to be at war because they've lived their whole lives that way. They feel distracted, and yet they also feel that, they just, it doesn't really hit them. And so when you talk about these things, it sounds like something that's very far off. But I have to say, in the recent years, though, war hit close to home for a majority of my students who are Muslim and first-generation Syrians. And so they had many families escaping Syria over the past few years. I have Palestinian students who have families who were directly bombed and targeted in Palestine. And so knowing that my students do not understand that true concept of war, but yet a sense of patriotism that comes from war, to me is the greatest injustice that our country feeds them. Because they think that war is something that unites people. War war is something that makes people proud on the 4th of July. War is something that makes people proud to be an American. I believe that's a country song out there somewhere that's played during fireworks on 4th of July. But they don't understand the hurt that comes from it. They don't understand, again, as young women, I teach at an all-girls school, as young women, that the women who are exploited around this world because of war, the women who are exploited here within our own country because of war. And so, like I said, I think that's one of the biggest injustices, and so I think it's our responsibility, where I take it, yes, upon myself as a high school teacher, to educate these young women with that knowledge, but also we have to reach out to that next generation. We have to reach out to the children and let them know that war is not just. And so I saw a young girl here earlier. She had a sign, a bitty one, and it looks like she made it herself. She's standing right there. I'm proud because she gets it. She understands that this is not the way, this is not the future, this is not that brainwashed mentality that we have. And just as I was talking to my sister here on the way here about this, and it was a specific concept, it's this John Wayne complex that we have, where we decided to become the police state of this world, you know, without even thinking about our own people. Drafting our young, drafting our minorities, drafting the people who feel like they have no options and no choice to go and fend for territory that we just want to suck resources out of, not even take time to support or be with or understand. So I guess my message is, in being a person who works with the youth and a person who works with young women, is that we have to educate our youth and have them understand that even though war is not something that is very evident in our own backyard, it's something that directly affects us, be it with the environment or the injustices that people here working in the military-industrial complex and building these war machines and such, that it's not benefiting us, and that war is something that is in our own backyard in various ways that we don't think, just because we don't have trenches right here on our own land. And so I wanted to continue to have that dialogue, to have that conversation, but I really want us to have that conversation with young people. People who will be voting, people who will be making the bigger changes. And so that's the demographic that we have.
The last thing is food not bombs. In your neighborhood in Los Angeles here, we have at least 5 food not bombs organizations that are still feeding people and sharing good food. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies. You're very, very much appreciated. I'd like to introduce in just a second here Blaise Bocane. The Los Angeles Weekly called him the most underrated humanist in the past decade. Blaise is an author and tireless fighter of human rights. He currently hosts World Focus for Pacifica Radio in Los Angeles. That's KPFK 90.7 FM from 10 to 11. He's also a news commentator for the same station, and we are blessed to hear this dynamic, inspiring activist who speaks of truth and power and empowers his audience by connecting them with the facts. He has served as a Mary Null missioner who was assigned to and expelled from Guatemala, standing up for the poor and oppressed. He also has served as a professor at UCLA and California State University, Northridge. He's currently the director of the Office of the Americas, a nonprofit educational corporation dedicated to global peace and justice. Blaise?
Good morning. And congratulations to 130 countries that have said we're going to ban the nukes. That's already been written, and they're working on it. We're very proud of them, and also quite embarrassed that our own country has not yet signed on and probably never will. So we have to act in spite of that. What we're called upon to understand here today is the importance of civil disobedience. You probably saw a film a few years back called Judgment at Nuremberg, and you remember the history of Nuremberg. People were executed because they followed orders. They were executed because they did what they were told, which was to eliminate the Jewish people and to eliminate gypsies and to eliminate homosexuals. And they said they had to do that because they were ordered. Many of those people were hung for following orders. The President of the United States has no authority to justify a nuclear war. That has to be opposed. No one can obey that order. That button is pushed. No one is to follow that. No one in a silo. No one in a submarine. No one anywhere. It has to be disobeyed, or the people, including the President, who are involved, are committing international crime. That is what we must not tolerate. And we must not talk about it as if we had a right to do it. We have to oppose those who say, well, he may push the button. Then there are others that say, well, Congress should be able to authorize it first. No, Congress can't authorize it first. This is genocide. This is biocide. This is something that cannot be tolerated. So we have to go at it from that angle. And the same applies to war in general. We had established a UN in order to end the scourge of war. That was the purpose of the UN, to end the scourge of war. And recently we saw a 22,000-ton bomb dropped as kind of a joke. It was supposed to be funny. The mother of all bombs, saying, well, there aren't many people living there. Yes, there were. There were a lot of people living there. They're dead now. And this daily killing can't go on. We listen to the news and we hear legal gobbledygook every day about who said what and who did what. What we don't realize is that we are authorizing people to be killed every day by our drones as well. So the nukes are only the tip of the iceberg. What is below it is all the weapons and all the wars that are going on. We've been in perpetual war now for 27 years. It started in Baghdad with the dropping of 88,000 tons of bombs on innocent people in Baghdad. They are not the enemy. We have created a response. People get tired of having their home broken into. So the CIA developed a term. It's called throwback. It's a CIA term. It means that after you bomb people, after you break into their homes, they will organize against you. Where do you think IS came from? It came out of Fallujah. It's coming out of Mosul. It's coming out of all the people who have been bombed, who have had their lives disrupted, and our own young people who have been recruited and lied to about what they were fighting about. It's time for us to realize that we don't follow orders. We are told as children, do what you are told. Well, children have to learn not to do what they are told. When the nice man asks them to come and see his puppy, we wouldn't have so much child abuse if children were taught not to do what they were told when there is a questionable situation. All of us must learn that. We have been far too obedient to pay taxes for cluster bombs, obedient to pay taxes for nuclear weapons. We have just paid $1 trillion for nuclear weapons. Is that where you're told want your tax money to go? That is in place of college. That is in place of health care. We're one of the only countries in the world, in the developed world, that does not have health care for all. This is a disgrace. The cost of it is our perpetual war system, which wants to modernize nukes. Well, you don't modernize nukes. There's nothing modern about them. You destroy the planet. Anyone plotting, planning, conspiring to commit a nuclear war is a criminal, and that cannot be tolerated. So we're here today to declare ourselves disobedient children to the warmongers who are about to destroy the air. You realize what this is, what we're breathing? It may be a little smoggy, but it's a miracle. It's called air. You don't live for more than 3 or 4 minutes without it. And that's what happens when you drop a fuel air bomb. It takes up all the air. And the nukes, that's what happens with a nuke. You take up all the air. You take the life out of it. And we also have water. Now if there are people who hate themselves so much, maybe we can teach them to love the water, to love the air, and to love the monarch butterflies, and to love the hummingbirds, because they're going to get rid of all of them the way they're going. This is not acceptable. Also, another phrase which has to go, and that is the phrase national interest. Well, for decades, our national interests have been exclusively Wall Street interests. That's not our interest. We aren't interested in that. We're not interested in Amazon swallowing up something else. That's not where it's at. Our national interests are clean air, clean water, and also we have to get off the worn out concept of nationalism. 4% of the world's people live in this country. 96% of the people on this globe don't live here. Now, any problems that we have on the globe are international. Nothing will be solved by national decision. Everything has to be resolved internationally. That's why this treaty of 130 nations is so extremely important at this time. It has to do whether your children are going to be alive next year. It has to do with whether your grandchildren are going to be alive. We have to say, no nukes, and that's what it's about. We don't want these foul weapons around, and we don't want the people in office who believe they're going to put $1 trillion into making more of them. This is intolerable. This is something that has to be eliminated. We can't go on the way we're going now, because we're going into a suicidal situation. Nuclear weapons are suicide. The accidents from nuclear weapons altogether have been enough to destroy the planet. And the experts, the true experts, say that it is a miracle we haven't destroyed the planet already. So thank you for being here today, and remember that we're here to ban the bomb and to end the rotten war system.
Thank you.
Is that rock or what? Okay, now we're going to be hearing from Michael Lindley. Michael Lindley served in the United States Navy during the Vietnam War and is the president of Veterans for Peace Los Angeles, Dante's Chapter 007. For over 12 years, every Sunday, he has tirelessly erected the Veterans for Peace Arlington West Santa Monica Memorial on the human cost of war. And if you haven't been there, please go. It is amazing and absolutely worth your time. Michael spearheads the VFPLA Unhoused Sleeping Bag Project and serves as an oversight manager for the Venice Neighborhood Unhoused Storage Container Project. He shows up at numerous social justice events such as the Women's March Los Angeles, Immigrant March on May Day, to mention just a few of many. He's an advocate for social justice and peace. Now, Michael Lindley.
Thank you very much. One of the mission statements of Veterans for Peace is to end nuclear weapons, to get rid of them. Also, I'm going to talk. Okay, like it says, I got to speak 5 times louder. I want to talk a little bit about the Golden Rule. The Golden Rule has a mission statement. The mission statement is the original protest vote. The Golden Rule will sail again to promote a nuclear-free future, to educate people on the dangers of radiation to humanity, and to stop the support of all wars. There's going to be 25 stops. It's going to come down from Northern California. They're going to stop 25 different ports. And we should, if you get an opportunity or somewhere, you should go take a look at it. Another thing we should be talking about is the Arky, Lou, no first strike bill. We need to force Congress and get to Congress and let them know that we need to pass this bill. Nobody has a right, as Clay says, to start a nuclear war. Nobody does. And Clay's also talked about modernizing our nuclear arsenal. This doesn't need to be done. It's just a waste of our money. We could use that money for a lot of other things like education, clean water, clean air, and things like that. The United States and Russia have 1,500 nuclear weapons. What do we need 1,500 nuclear weapons for? That's ridiculous. I mean, it only going to take 3 or 4 to destroy the whole planet. We don't need them. So the Golden Rule will be in Los Angeles at Marina del Rey, hopefully around the 8/18 or through the 8/22nd. We're planning to have an event there. Hopefully we can get it done, and we will invite anybody who wants to come to check it out, to see the Golden Rule, to listen to what they have to say. There's one other thing I want to talk about, which Blaze talked a little bit about, and that's called the mother of all bombs. You know, we don't need the mother of all bombs. We need the mother of all health care. We need the mother of all clean water. Yes. We need the mother of all jobs. We need the mother of all peace. There's so many more things that we need mother of, other than we need a bomb. That's for darn sure. We know that's true. It's just a waste of money, and we need to stop that now. We have to stop it. If we don't, we're going to destroy this planet. We don't need that for it to happen. I want to give you one more thing here. Veterans for Peace, Golden Rule Project at gmail.com. That's the website. You go there, you'll be able to find out a little bit more about the Golden Rule. So I hope that people come out, hopefully in August, to see the Golden Rule. Or if you have an opportunity when you come down the coast, and you get to the website, you'll find out where it's going to be pulling in at. It's a beautiful boat, beautiful people, and they really have a good point. And that's the reason why they're coming down the coast, to demonstrate the fact that we do not need nuclear weapons. Thank you very much. At gmail.com, okay. So the Golden Rule, okay, the Veterans for Peace Golden Rule Project at gmail.com.
Thank you so much, Michael. Next, we're going to hear from Kathleen Hernandez. In the words of her Veteran for Peace colleague, Kathleen is one of the people who is always there to do what needs to be done. She has worked tirelessly for Veterans for Peace and Social Justice, bringing her passionate commitment, energy, persistence, and impressive skills to an endless array of campaigns, actions, coalition building, conferences, lobbying. The list of Kathleen's organizing work for peace and justice just goes on and on. From Camp Casey to New Orleans and Washington to Columbia, Arlington West, outreach to GIs and veterans, truth in recruiting, risking arrest, serving on boards and committees, tackling the difficult organizing tasks. In 2010, Kathleen co-founded the MLK Coalition of Greater Los Angeles. I now introduce Kathleen Hernandez.
Good morning to everyone. I'm going to try to use my teacher's voice so I can project as far as possible. There's been so much said about banning the bomb, and Veterans for Peace has been integral in trying to stop this madness. Veterans for Peace is profoundly disappointed the United States has refused to take part in the negotiations at the United Nations to ban nuclear weapons. This is but one in a series of missed opportunities by the U.S. to use its position as the world's undisputed military power to change the course of history and join with the majority of member nations at the United Nations to end the danger and peril that nuclear weapons pose to the world. Perhaps President John F. Kennedy said it best in 1961 in his address to the United Nations. Every man, woman, and child lives under a nuclear sword of Damocles. hanging by the slenderest of threads, capable of being cut at any moment by accident or miscalculation or by madness. The world has changed since President Kennedy spoke those words, but unfortunately it has changed for the worse. The world has become more dangerous and the chance of nuclear war is now greater than during the height of the Cold War. The Trump administration has at its disposal the most powerful nuclear arsenal in the world, and it still wants more. President Trump even welcomes a new arms race and is apparently willing to spend billions of dollars for such folly in clear violation of Article 6 of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. As did President Obama. Let's be realistic here. War is madness, and we need to end it, all of it, now. Veterans for Peace believes that it would be diplomatically more prudent to use the UN talks as an opportunity to engage Iran and North Korea in discussions to determine if there is some common ground on which to proceed and lessen tensions in the Middle East and the Far East. In a letter to Ambassador Nikki Haley, U.S. Permanent Representative to the UN, our national president, Mary Landor, said, "Our government's duplicity seems to have no bounds. We blithely ignore our treaty obligations under the National Proliferation Treaty, and we stir the old cry that we cannot trust Iran and North Korea, countries which voted to support the ongoing negotiations." I would throw in Russia as well. We forget that we already hold Iran to our own test and verify standards, and seem to be adamant that a treaty banning nuclear weapons be taken off the table. Well, Veterans for Peace says no, we will not take it off the table. And Veterans for Peace is an NGO, and we will be there at the United Nations. We ask that you sign these petitions, or sorry, not petitions, but these bills in the Senate and House of Representatives regarding first strike. We ask that you get out and talk to your neighbors. I would like to ask for a prayer for tomorrow, for Father's Day, because in my hometown, and this is something that I've had to address in Topanga Canyon, guess what they're having for Father's Day? A paintball war game for the children and their fathers. And that is just perpetual militarism, training our children to take up that banner of warfare and not consider nonviolent means of communication and solving our problems. The Golden Rule, as Michael said, is coming down the coast. We cordially invite you to join us. Hopefully it will be August 20th at Burton Chase Park in Marina Del Rey. We encourage you to contact us if you would like to use that boat for some type of mission, discussion, training. It is there for all of us to use, so you can email me or contact me on Facebook at Veterans for Peace, Los Angeles. Our campaign that Veterans for Peace is carrying out in 2017 is ban nuclear weapons, no new nukes, no first strike. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Kathleen. Now we're going to hear from Myla Reason. She's a longtime No Nukes campaigner, currently working with a coalition of citizens, activists, and organizations to shut down 2 nuclear power plants. PG&E's decrepit Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant to our north, as well as Palo Verde nuclear plant in Arizona. Prior to returning to live in Southern California, Mila organized New Mexico communities to resist a dump for plutonium contamination nuclear weapons located near the Carlsbad National Caverns. She is an elected listener representative on KPFK's local station board. She creates and posts no nukes videos on her own YouTube channel and works with Harvey Wasserman on his solartopia.org website. Mila?
No nukes. I'll say that again with the button on. No nukes. No nukes. Closer to my mouth. Thank you, Lorna. And by the way, I worked for over a decade fighting a dump for plutonium-contaminated nuclear weapons waste in New Mexico, known as the Waste Isolation Pilot Plant. It failed 9,985 years ahead of schedule. It was supposed to contain the plutonium-contaminated waste for a minimum of 10,000 years. So plutonium is lethal virtually forever, but it failed after 15 years. Today I'm going to talk about the connection between nuclear power and nuclear bombs. You know, they're intrinsically connected, and what I forgot to say is that I do want to thank, I acknowledge the fact that we are here on top of the land. And I appreciate the privilege of being able to speak on top of the land. A few years ago, Ralph Nader was at a symposium connecting Fukushima to Indian Point, which threatens New York City. It's only 35 miles out of New York City. And he explained that, these are his words, nuclear power arose out of a group of scientists and engineers who harbored more than a reasonable guilt complex for the use of their knowledge producing the atomic bomb. Before we had nuclear power plants producing electricity, we had nuclear reactors, 9 of them, up at the Columbia River in Washington State producing plutonium for 70,000 nuclear bombs. The scientists who felt guilty about their knowledge being used for nuclear weapons decided that they wanted to have a peaceful use of nuclear power. So they pushed to have commercial nuclear reactors. What they didn't take into account was that they were creating de facto nuclear time bombs. Even, you know, and here we are in Southern California, where we are downwind from the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant. Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant, its 2 decrepit reactors sit on a web of 13 fault lines. And the senior resident inspector for the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, Dr. Michael Peck, 2.5 years ago, looked at the plans, looked at the earthquake faults, and said that the plant is simply not engineered to withstand the kind of earthquake that could trigger a meltdown. He said that PG&E, the operator of the plant, should shut Diablo immediately and not reopen it until they could prove that the plant could be operated safely. Unfortunately, he was shipped off to Tennessee, and his advice was not taken. And now we find ourselves in a terrible situation because if the big quake hits, Diablo's only 45 miles from the San Andreas Fault. If there is a meltdown at Diablo before the plant's scheduled shutdown in 2025, Los Angeles will be enveloped by a radioactive plume and this area will be uninhabitable. So you need to contact the Democrats who are in power and tell them that their plan to wait until 2025 to shut Diablo is simply unacceptable. We need to shut that plant now. There's another plant that very few people in Southern California are aware of. It's called the Palo Verde Nuclear Power Plant in Arizona. That plant was constructed because Southern California municipalities got together and funded transmission lines and funded the building of that plant. Here in Southern California, we get some of our energy from Palo Verde. Palo Verde evaporates 42,000 gallons of water every minute. 42,000 gallons of water every minute that could otherwise be used for reforestation goes up into the aquifer, travels eastward, and contributes to catastrophic climate change. So we need to shut Palo Verde, we need to shut Diablo, and we need to force Edison to actually spend the money that's required for the most robust containment for the enormous amount of radioactive waste that sits on the beach to our south at San Clemente. Thank you. No news.
Next, I'd like to bring up Jimmy Hara, who is a medical doctor at FAAFP, is a board member of the Physicians for Social Responsibility of Los Angeles and of the Nuclear Age Peace Foundation. He is also professor of family medicine at the Charles Drew University College of Medicine. He is concurrently professor of clinical family medicine at the David Giffen School of Medicine at UCLA, and the Family Medicine Residency Program Director Emeritus at the Kaiser Permanente Los Angeles Center for Medical Education. He currently serves on the advisory board of the UCLA Crime Program with the goal of providing physical leaders to serve vulnerable populations. But his biggest comment that he wanted me to mention is that his wife and 2 kids marched across the country for global nuclear disarmament in 1986. There's so much more to tell you about this guy. He's wonderful. We're blessed to have him here. So I'd like to introduce Jimmy Hara.
Once again, it's already been mentioned that there are now 16,000 nuclear weapons by the U.S. and Russia possess right now. And understand, these weapons are megatonnage in strength, 1,000 times stronger than the Hiroshima or Nagasaki bomb. And there's an international group of scientists that did a study and said, if there was a limited nuclear war with less than 100 bombs exchanged by Pakistan and India, that would lead to the death of 2 billion people on this planet, mostly in China, because of the fallout and because there was starvation because of soot and ashes from that nuclear exchange would basically prevent crops from becoming to the point that people can eat them and not starve to death. So right now in our Congress, actually, Ed Markey from Massachusetts and Ted Luke just from Florence, they're trying to implement a bill that will prevent our current president from being the only one to press the bomb for a nuclear exchange. And they want there to be someone else other than just the president. And so, especially since Ted Luke happens to be here in Southern California, I think we should encourage him and Ed Markey, and hopefully that bill will end up passing. So once again, nuclear weapons, even though not one has been really dropped of late, understand last year the Congress passed a bill authorizing $1 trillion to be spent over the next decade for modernization of our nuclear arsenal. And once again, $1 trillion, I would submit, can do a lot in terms of pure water, better food, health care, and ending homelessness, especially here in California. So I thank you for your attention, and basically stay tuned and keep working on preventing the nuclear bomb from ever being used, and hopefully making sure that Donald Trump is not the only person who has authority in this country to decide whether we use it or not.
Thank you, Dr. Hara. The next person up is Grace Aaron, who has been the treasurer of the Los Angeles branch of Women's International League for Peace and Freedom for over 10 years. She's also on the local station board of KPFK Radio and is on the Pacifica Radio National Board. Grace?
At the end of 2016, the United Nations passed a resolution to open up negotiations for nuclear disarmament on a global scale. This is after over 20 years of gridlock on this subject. So we're really hoping that political pressure and people pressure will be active and will urge the United Nations to come up with as strong a treaty banning nuclear weapons as is possible. So that's why we're out here, just to tell you, raise your hand if you've heard of Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. Have you all heard of it? Okay, some haven't. The Women's International League for Peace and Freedom celebrated its 100th birthday in 2015. So we are 102 years old. WILPF was formed as an effort to bring peace during World War I and has been active ever since. It was started by 1,000 women who met in The Hague, and they were mainly from the suffrage movement. Its first president was Jane Addams, who later won the Nobel Peace Prize and also was the first woman congressman. I love WILPF because WILPF has taken strong stands strong stands against war, against nuclear weapons, in favor of justice, realizing that peace is really not going to last if there's not justice, equality, and care for those who are underprivileged, for racial integration, and for racial justice, economic justice. WILPF has also, over the years, taken strong stands on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that's been for over 30 years. Also, for many controversial issues. WILPF is one of the few mainstream peace organizations that has been against nuclear power as well for a very long time. So I love the women of WILPF and the men of WILPF who've taken very strong stands and have just persevered and given a voice to women and all people. And a voice for peace, social justice, environmental equity, and a better world. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Grace. Thank you so much, Grace. Our next speaker up is Theo Kaiser, who has been a member of the Los Angeles Catholic Worker Movement for over 7 years. In addition to running a large soup kitchen on LA's Skid Row, the Catholic Worker is dedicated to ending the systems of oppression that cause poverty, including war making and preparations for war. Over the years, he has been to jail multiple times for protesting the continued development of nuclear armaments at Vandenberg Air Force Base, as well as the Nevada test site. I now introduce Theo Kaiser.
Like they said, my name's Theo. We at the Los Angeles Catholic Workers have spent a lot of time trying to raise awareness about Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is right up the coast here in Santa Barbara County. It's at Vandenberg Air Force Base. They test the intercontinental ballistic missiles that would potentially carry nuclear warheads. And the way they kind of do it is, as you probably know, there's missile silos all over the country. They will bring in, and they're waiting to shoot off the bomb at any moment. They'll bring in one of the teams that staff one of these places. They'll bring in the missile from this place. They'll remove the live warhead and shoot it off at Vandenberg Air Force Base. They target it at the Marshall Islands at a place called the Kwajalein Atoll. Now, in order to test the missile accurately, they replaced the warhead with a dummy warhead using depleted uranium. nuclear material is really heavy, it's really dense, there's nothing really like that, so in order to test it accurately, they use depleted uranium. They shoot it off into this atoll there, where, as you might imagine, this uranium poisons the water. The Marshall Island people are originally fishing people. You can't really do that anymore when your water is full of depleted uranium. So I think this example of the testing they do at Vandenberg Air Force Base and the Marshall Island people is just one more example of how even when these weapons are not being used, there are people who are adversely affected by it. These people who are poisoned, their water is poisoned. And as was mentioned, we do at the Catholic Worker, we do a big soup kitchen down on Skid Row, and we really believe if we spent money for human needs instead of nuclear weapons, everyone could have health care, everyone could have a home, everyone could have enough to eat. Thank you.
Our next person up is Tanya Selleck, and Tanya is an organizer of Guerrilla Food Not Bombs and Solidarity Network LA. Since she was 10 years old, she has fought against nuclear proliferation, working with SANE and Nuclear Freeze for over a decade now. She's here to talk about solidarity with Navajo grandmothers fighting coal and uranium mining in Black Mesa, Arizona. Tanya?
Hi everyone, like I was introduced, I started working on anti-nuclear movements when I was about 10 years old, and it started with indigenous movements, stopping a radioactive waste dump in Ward Valley, California. That led to my work with the Dene grandmothers of Black Mesa, Big Mountain, Arizona. So the reason why I wanted to speak to you right now, the grandmothers in Black Mesa have been fighting coal and uranium mining for over 40 years. They've been dealing with the federal government and Peabody Coal Company violently attacking them, harassing them, impounding their sheep and cattle as a way to try to starve them off the land so that they can mine it for obvious, natural resources that are worth a lot to the government, but not quite as much as it is to the grandmothers that consider coal the liver of Mother Earth, and they consider themselves the caretakers of that land and of Mother Earth in general. So right now there's actually an action alert with a Dene grandmother, Lorna Paisley. She lives really close to the coal mine, and just a couple days ago, Hopi Rangers came out there and told her she has no longer the right to keep her sheep and cattle on her own land. So we are asking for human rights observers to come out to Black Mesa, Arizona and stand with the grandmothers, because when we have non-Indigenous supporters there standing with them, that's when the Hopi Rangers back off. They don't want it getting out to the public that they are using intimidation and harassment to try to force traditional Dene grandmothers off the land. If people would like to find out more about the work that Guerrilla Food Not Bombs and Solidarity Network LA does with the grandmothers, you can look us up online at www.sonela.org, SONELA.org. And thank you, everybody.
While I have this minute, I just want to say thanks for coming. It's a great honor to be with all these people who want no bombs and peace on earth. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tanya. Food Not Bombs is an amazing organization. I was blessed with the opportunity to do an interview with the organizer at the Conscious Life Expo, and it's just an amazing organization. Please look into it. Our next person up is Jessica Renshaw. She is the author of The Reynolds Family, The Nuclear Age, and Brave Wooden Boat. Now, Jessica grew up in Hiroshima, where her dad was assigned by their Atomic Energy Commission to study the effects of radiation on children who survived the atomic bomb. During their 3 years in Hiroshima, he built a yacht. As a result of his findings on dangers of radiation, The family sailed the yacht, the Phoenix of Hiroshima, into the Pacific, proving grounds in 1958 to protest the American nuclear testing, and to the USSR in 1961 to protest Soviet nuclear testing. I'd like to bring up Jessica Renshaw.
I have a 6-minute synopsis of this book I've written, The Reynolds Family, the Nuclear Age, and a Brave Wooden Boat. And I want to tell you a story, a true story, a personal story. I was 1 year old when the bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. 6 years later, our family moved to Hiroshima. My dad was assigned by our Atomic Energy Commission to study the effects of the first atomic bomb dropped on human beings in Hiroshima on the children of Hiroshima. He was a scientist, Dr. Reynolds. For 3 years, my father studied 4,800 Japanese children exposed to radiation. In his spare time, he built a 50-foot yacht and intending to sail around the world on a pleasure cruise. He named it Phoenix of Hiroshima. At the end of his 3 years studying the effects of radiation on Japanese children, he turned in his findings to the Atomic Energy Commission that said that nuclear radiation was dangerous, it was cancer-causing, and that it was not healthy for human beings. Then our family climbed aboard our yacht with our cat and 3 Japanese yachtsmen from Hiroshima, and we sailed around the world. It was a pleasure cruise. It has nothing to do with radiation or what my dad was doing as a job. 3 young Japanese yachtsmen sailed with us, and it was amazing that they would go around the world with Americans because our countries 9 years before had been at war. We had been enemies 9 years earlier. We sailed around the world together, my father, my mother, my brother Ted, and myself. I was 10 and Ted was 16. We sailed around the world for 3.5 years. When we came back around to Hawaii, we had only one more leg of the trip to go to get back to Japan. And we were docked in Honolulu. In Honolulu, we met the Golden Rule, which you've just heard about. And the Golden Rule, the crew of the Golden Rule were intending to sail their yacht into the nuclear test zone in the Pacific. In 1958, our country was testing nuclear weapons in the Pacific. 2 of the Japanese crewmen had flown back to Japan after 3 years. One of them was still with us, Niichi Mikami. When the Golden Rule was brought back by the Coast Guard, because our government had just instituted put an injunction, an injunction forbidding American citizens to go into that Pacific nuclear test zone. It's 390,000 square miles of ocean, and they said Americans could not go in that zone. We had to go through that zone to get back to Hiroshima, to get back to Japan. On the sailboat, you have to go where the winds tell you to go. So the Japanese who was still with us, Niichi Mikami, and our family chose to sail into that nuclear test zone as a protest against the testing. My father was an expert on radiation. He had studied it for 3 years. And Niichi Mikami was a citizen of Hiroshima whose uncle had been lost. They never found his body. His uncle had been killed by the atomic bomb. We felt that we were in a strategic place at a strategic time. The same Atomic Energy Commission, which had hired my dad to determine the dangers of radiation, was the agency which was in charge of the nuclear testing program. They had, when my dad turned in his findings from 3 years of research on 4,800 children to the Atomic Energy Commission, they suppressed his findings. They classified them so at such a high level he could not read them himself. They did not publish the findings. They suppressed them so that they could assure the American public that it was perfectly safe to test nuclear weapons, knowing better. My dad knew that each additional bomb, and there have been 3,000 since then, each additional bomb detonated added to the radiation, the carcinogenic radiation spreading around the world through the atmosphere and through the oceans. So the scientist, my dad the scientist, became an activist, and our voyage of pleasure became one of protest. We sailed into the test zone, were arrested. My dad was arrested and brought back to Hawaii for trial. In 1961, we sailed to the Soviet Union to protest Soviet nuclear testing. We were not against our country or any other country. We were against radiation as a health and environmental hazard. We sailed to Nakhotka because Vladivostok, the nearest military base, was iced in at that time of year. And I wondered what the Russians thought when we came up in a 50-foot yacht, sailed with an American family aboard and 2 cats up to the coast of the Soviet Union. And they must have wondered, what kind of country do they come from that is so free that any family can just build a boat and sail to another country and protest their nuclear testing? We had a good talk about peace with the captain of the Soviet Coast Guard boat, which stopped us. But he would not receive hundreds and hundreds of messages which we had been given by survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and by other people wanting peace and wanting to get rid of nuclear weapons. He would not accept those. He refused them, and he turned us away. We did not allow us to land or even get close to the coast. Back in Japan, we felt we had made no difference. My mother, Barbara Reynolds, felt a responsibility to get the appeals to the leaders of the world. On Christmas Day, 1961, my mother sat in the Peace Park in Hiroshima, feeling defeated that we had not accomplished our purpose. To the American test zone and to the Russians, we had not accomplished our purpose of letting them know that nuclear weapons were harmful and we wanted them banned. She sat at the base of the Children's Monument, the monument to the children of Hiroshima who died. My dad studied the ones who survived. Many thousands, millions more died. She sat at the base of that monument, fasting all Christmas Day and praying to know what to do with all these messages from the hibakusha, from the survivors. She didn't know God, but she knew there was somebody, some hand of providence that was directing our activities, bringing together the fact that we were from Hiroshima, that we were at that place at the time the Golden Rule was forbidden to go into the test zone, that we had deep sea sailing experience. She knew that there was somebody above us, somebody over us, somebody bigger than us that had a plan, and we were a very small part of it. And as she prayed during that day, she had a sense of an answer coming to her, that it was the hibakusha themselves, the survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the only human beings to have survived nuclear attack. They were the ones that needed to take this message to the world. With the blessing of Hiroshima City Council, she was actually made a citizen of Hiroshima. With their blessing, she accompanied 2 survivors, one a young woman of 35 and one an 18-year-old boy, around the world to appeal to the leaders of all the nuclear nations and to the United Nations for a testing ban. And 2 years later, she took 25 hibakusha from Hiroshima and Nagasaki to all the nuclear nations and to the United Nations and all the way through the USSR, appealing for a ban on nuclear testing. When my mother died, the people of Hiroshima, the survivors, were so grateful to her that they put a monument to her in their Peace Park, their ground zero. The Phoenix of Hiroshima, the boat my dad built in which we sailed around the world for pleasure and sailed in 2 protests against nuclear weapons, is now at the bottom of the Sacramento River. The Golden Rule, the boat that was our inspiration, has been brought back to life. It was found in the same condition as the Phoenix. No masts, a hole in the side, beached, in a terrible shape. Veterans for Peace rebuilt, reestablished the Golden Rule, and she's now sailing for peace up and down the coast of California. Our boat is at the bottom of the Sacramento River. We have a corporation set up, a tax-exempt corporation set up, so we can receive funding for that. So we're hoping that the Phoenix 2 will someday be sailing again, or at least will be a monument, a piece of history, a historic artifact, a brave foot boat. The website for more information about the Phoenix is phoenixofhiroshima.org. Phoenixofhiroshima.org. But now finally we have hope after all these decades. The United Nations is considering a ban on nuclear weapons. The children my dad studied in Hiroshima back after World War II, when I was a child myself, are now in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. They are coming to the United Nations, came this week, with an appeal signed by nearly 3 million people of the world, with their own unique, single message. Don't let what happened to us in Hiroshima and Nagasaki happen again to anyone, ever. Let us stand in solidarity with the Hibakusha. No more Hiroshima. No more Nagasaki. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jessica, and her handsome husband, Jerry, for holding the mic, and he's agreed to hold it for me. We're now getting to the end of our rally. Michael Novick is going to come up and speak for a moment.
Hi, just a quick announcement. I'm with Change Links, and we're trying to put together a monthly coordinating conference call for peace and anti-war organizations. Change Links, as you may know, is a community calendar and progressive newspaper. The call is every first Sunday of the month at 4 p.m. The information is on the website, change-links.org, or in the newspaper if you have it. If you call 515-604-9702 and enter the access code that's listed, 4 o'clock the first Sunday of every month, so that the next time we do this, we can have 20 or 30,000 people out here and make the anti-war and anti-nuke a mass movement once again. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're coming to the end of our rally, and I'd like to bring up once again Lydia Ponce. And just so that if you don't know, we are gathered on the land of the top of a nation right now, and therefore we will honor their traditions as we should. So Lydia, please pray us out.
I would be remiss if I didn't say that the World Day of Prayer for Peace is next Wednesday. At the Mauna Kea, Chief Arvel Looking Horse is asking that we recognize that day as a day of prayer for peace. The Mauna Kea has 13 telescopes, and they want to put a 30-meter telescope in addition to the 13, that's 14. A 30-meter telescope, and part of it's being built at Caltech, Pasadena. So we need to stop those efforts, and I'm going to start with a prayer as soon as I get somebody else to handle. I'm not going to do it through the bullhorn. And I want to thank Food Not Bombs for always, Guerrilla Food Not Bombs, for always sharing food love with us. Food Not Bombs! Food Not Bombs! Food Not